Welcome to the Real Joe Show. Today we have a special guest, Ryan Castle, coming from Cape Cod MLS and Cape Cod Association of Realtors. We're going to be talking about the value of a realtor and how to best talk about yourself and get your messaging across. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, Joe. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah.
So are you on Cape Cod right now or elsewhere?
I'm in South Carolina right now.
South Carolina. Very nice. A little bit warmer here, I believe, than it is up north.
Yes.
Good for you. So, we used to work together. For those who don't know, I used to be a Cape and Islands member of the association and MLS, and was on the board as president of the association for a year, and got to work closely with Ryan. Many discussions about lots of topics. So we're going to dive into some of those today. One of the biggest ones I like to talk about, and we go back and forth on this one, is the value of a realtor, and not just as being part of the Realtor Association, but also as you provide services to your clients. What is the value that you bring to them? And Ryan just recently went through a home purchase not too long ago, and we talked about that. And so I'm just going to put it out there for you to start, Ryan. From your point of view, as a recent consumer, how would you describe the value of a realtor?
Yeah, value that real estate agent in that aspect is someone who, you're not going to see that house, right? They're not going to be the one bringing you the house. So stop thinking that your clients are going to see the house through you. From the standpoint of you're there to, at least me as a consumer and an educated consumer and a consumer who's an executive of a company who's thinking about this stuff, right? I'm there to do the stuff that I don't want to do, there to advise me on the process, right? Like they're thinking about things that I'm not thinking about. And that's what I'm like, as we walk through our house, right? My agent knew kind of what house we were going to end up buying when we ended up buying it because he saw the reaction of us, right? And being that third party facilitator around that. I talk about that all the time. When I'm hiring someone for a job, right? I bring someone else in the interview that can see how me and that person interact, because that outside perspective is what's valuable. That home ownership transaction, that buying a house, is a feeling and an emotional process, right? Because you're talking about something you're going to live in for 3, 5, 10, 15, 30 years, perhaps. I mean, especially as the data has shown and stretching out how much further people live in a house. And so that's a really emotional transaction, but you need that person to kind of, on the outside, to kind of see how you're reacting to it and interacting with that house. Almost like a person. It sounds weird, right?
Right.
But also that value of what they're bringing, right? The pricing strategy, how to get the offer accepted, making sure you don't feel at the end of the day that you're paying too much. It doesn't matter what you're paying. It matters whether the person that feels that they're buying the house is paying too much, right? This is not an exact science business. You're especially in the residential real estate market where most people are buying a house to live in. You're looking at investment property. You're looking at, even residential investment property. That's a numbers game, right? That's not a purchase. So if you're trying to bring numbers into it, you're missing that boat of that personal emotion connection. At the end of the day, what we know, Joe, from all the data we've seen, right? People choose an agent by and large based on who they trust and who they like.
That's right.
So you got to be that person that they trust and they like.
That's right. And when I remember you were talking about going to an open house and the agent was like, "Oh, I'll meet you there." And you were like, "I don't need you there."
Yeah, I want him to look at the house before I put in an offer. So I might call him and say, "Hey, can you move over here and go look at it? Tell me what you think." But I don't need you to walk me in a house because I don't want to waste your time. From my perspective, I'm not trying to waste your time. Me and my wife are trying to go out and have a casual day where we go see houses is like a pre-look, right? Like we'll drive because I don't want to waste your time. I walk in the house and my wife knows this is not the house she wants. She walks out,
Right.
right?
It is pretty instant.
We don't want to waste our time, your valuable time doing that is at least the way I look at it. And like but you got to have that conversation with the client up front. What do they expect, you know?
Right. Right. Do you feel as though at what point do you feel as though like they are adding that value? Is it at the negotiation part, or
It's from the
understanding what
beginning.
you want?
It's from the beginning because it's like, after you look at a house, okay, what'd you like about that house? What'd you not like? As you get through it, you get to what are, like let's take for instance, is we're talking about our wants and needs, is diving into it a little bit further, right? Initially, my wife and I tell him, well, we have a dog who's very active. We need a fenced-in yard. He goes, you don't need a fenced-in yard. You need a yard that's fenceable.
Right.
Right. There's a difference between the two. Yeah. Right. So what I think I need is not necessarily what I need, but if you take the time to understand what the person needs, you get there.
Was that done with this agent? I assume it was a great agent. You would have been picky. Did you have a long sit down with the agent up front, going over what your needs were?
No, I mean, it ended up, it was one of my best friends and someone I've known for a while who him and I have talked about real estate for years, right? Because I'm in the business adjacent to, selling real estate, right? And so him and I have talked about the business for years. So I knew he understood the real estate business. And the beauty thing is my wife and him get along really well, right? Like if I'm picking the agent, it's all about who my wife wants to deal with in transaction, who can calm her down.
Yeah, that's smart. That's a good, you're a good husband. And you want to keep it that way.
That's good. You do. I mean, you need to know who she feels comfortable with, right?
Yeah. So when it comes
I have some hurt feelings from other people that I didn't choose them. And it's like, well, even when we sold the house and, sold our house, it's who my wife felt the most comfortable with, right? I mean, that's ultimately who it's going to be. And, you're not choosing someone that she's comfortable with that doesn't know what they're doing. You're selecting it out of the few that know what they're doing.
I talk to a lot of agents who feel as though their value is looking at the house alongside with the consumer and pointing out some of the defects or some of the pluses and minuses of the property as we're going through.
I think seeing the house before you make an offer, absolutely, but maybe not in the first view. I mean, and you got to remember, right? Like, I mean, all our markets are recalibrating right now, so you very few times are you trying to make an offer by seeing it at 10 and have to make an offer by noon now, but even so, even in that rush, like, okay, we'll go to the previous house. I'll text them immediately or call them, but hey man, can you get over here to later today? We do want to make an offer. But even then, most people were taking, time till the next day to take offers, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to they weren't taking the first offer that jumped on them.
That's right. Good. When it comes to the liability of an agent when they do start doing that pre-inspection inspection, even though they're have you seen asking you to put your association hat on, do you see agents getting in trouble for either not picking that stuff out or not disclosing things that they see?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think as the buyer's agent, if you don't see something, you don't see something, right? But because you're not a home inspector, right? I think, always, well, if someone asks questions, you'll be like, I'll wait till the home inspection to kind of, look at that, right? I think that obviously that's the most important. But yeah, I mean, I think most people, like I said, it's an emotional decision. So if you see something that doesn't look right, more likely it's probably not right,
Right.
And you're probably going to move on anyways, which is why that's important on the listing side, right? No, I remember on my, when I was recently selling my house, my listing agent actually called me and said she was at was there at a showing because Cape Cod, which is different than most places, right? The listing agent actually shows up at the showings, right? And so she said, well, they see this scrape on the roof that you repainted something on the ceiling. And I was like, oh, we did? What was that? And I'm talking to my wife on the phone. And she goes, oh, yep, we scraped the top of the Christmas tree across the ceiling and it created a black mark. So we repainted it. Wasn't like a leak, right? But someone's asking, was it leaking? And she's like, I don't know. Let me ask, right? But we didn't think about it, and we had it. So ask the questions too. Like, what is that?
Right.
It may be a simple answer.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, I've read a lot about there's an increase of lawsuits against agents, especially across North Carolina, because down here we have due diligence where people going in and they're putting money down. They wouldn't walk away from a large chunk of money, and they were foregoing the inspections at the advice of agents in some instances. And now that's starting to backfire.
And that's what they were doing. But like, you can also, and at least, what my agent says we did was we wrote in that we were going to cover the cost of a certain amount of repairs, right? Like, there's different ways to do it without actually giving up your ability to do your job, like your ability to do your due diligence.
Yeah, I mean, there was such a frenzy that a lot of agents were recommending you're not going to win it if you put an inspection contingency in there, and that's turning around to bite them. Yeah,
and that's where good agents were creating other creative ways to protect their buyer clients, right?
That's right.
Like, mine, I think we settled on that we were going to cover all repairs under $5,000, up to $5,000,
right,
as the whole buyer ourselves.
Yeah. There's definitely ways to do that the right way, so at least the consumer is protected. So let's talk about Realtor as their value in their own business when they're running their business. When you work with a lot, you talk to a lot of agents. Do you see where they're spending time on probably items and tasks that technology could handle for them, or another person could handle for them, and they're not actually?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is where I'm really thinking about what AI can do, because I see so many poorly written listing descriptions, right? Yeah. And to me, AI, the easiest thing to do is let AI start your first draft, Chat GPT start your first draft of the listing description.
That would be interesting. Have anyone who's tried that?
Technology that MLSs can layer on to do that for you too. And even talking to some of the great agents, I was talking to one that was on my board the other day. We were having this conversation at our board level of where do we see AI in that MLS space, right? To help the agent, because I'm thinking of it in terms of how to use AI to make agents' job easier on the stuff that doesn't matter as much. And they're like, well, listing scripts I write really well, but I would love to have the AI write my initial one, and then I can dress it up and do what I need to do from there.
Now that would be interesting. And is that how would by picture, by sending in a photo and having it?
They can look at all the listing details you put in. They can look at the photos. They can do all of that. There's technology out there that's allowed it and all populated. There's also technology out there that's allowing you to look at the photos and then fill out the space, right? Like all the rooms tabs, all the other details you have to put in. I mean, from an MLS executive style, I'm looking at how I can make sure that agents don't mess up the data going in the system on data that I can determine through photos.
That's
or
right.
Through a floor plan or something along that lines, right? Because the amount of data that I've talked about this, the amount of data that exists. If you're not doing a floor plan as a listing agent, then you're messing up to start with, right? Absolutely. You are causing you're not doing the best you can to cooperate with everyone, because as a buyer, I really didn't even want to look at houses that didn't have floor plans online, because if it didn't flow, I didn't want to waste my time, and everyone else is just wasting their time doing that.
Yeah. I had a real funky house, and it was a beautiful location, but it's kind of a weird layout. Put the layout on the floor plan on the MLS listing, just so people could see that it was kind of funky. And the person who bought it came down with the floor plan in hand with a ruler. He was an engineer, and he was trying to figure out exactly how we could maximize the space, and having that was hugely helpful in selling that property.
Yeah, and then on the buy side, right? Like, my one thing my great agent did was the house we bought didn't have a floor plan attached to it. So he's doing the floor plan as we're going after we bought it, he went back over and did the floor plan so we can start taking it to the carpet places and the hardwood
Nice.
flooring places and the painting places and you can start getting good or better quotes without having to get all these people in the house before you buy. So you're ready to go the first day you buy the house to get stuff done.
Yeah, that's brilliant. All right, let's stay on technology. AI is fascinating, and I'd love to see that happen. We're, the agents, the agents are like the Swiss Army knives of entrepreneurs, if you want to call it. They're supposed to be content writers.
Yeah, they got. I mean, they're
and
not
all this stuff.
marketers. They're not content writers. They're not
Right.
photographers. They're not any of this, right? What agents are bread and butter wise are, great agents are connectors,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's what they are, right? Great
Right.
agents are connectors, and that's a very valuable skill, right? A tangible skill, and to get someone to be able to like and trust you, right? I mean, it's not like financial advice. It's not unlike financial advisors. Like, talk to the top financial advisors that you know about how they get clients. Talk to the top lawyers, right? It's going to be the same thing for you, right? So it's not a unique marketplace, but the top lawyers aren't trying to do the best. They have help, right? Like the top financial advisors have help, right? Like, and so I don't know why these agents try to do it all themselves.
Yeah, the best attorneys have a great assistant with them. That's for sure.
In fact,
They're a great
I
paralegal.
really successful attorneys who say I'm not a very good lawyer, but I have a great paralegal, right? Or I have a couple great paralegals.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. So let's talk about teams. What are you seeing in the trends of teams? Teams are obviously here to stay.
Gotta be there. I mean, I don't know how you can do it all, kind of thing, right? Like whether, and I say the team takes a different format. Whether you're hiring as an agent, hiring the rest of the people and bringing them on, or whether you're affiliating with a brokerage who's providing some of that team benefit, right? Because I think that's the trend. Is either you're going to be at a brokerage that's going to allow you that you're going to have to hire your own team up, right? Or you're going to be at a brokerage that's going to do more for you, and you don't have to hire a team. Is that the way you kind of see it, dude?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen, there's the firm where I am right now, Relevate. We offer that. We have a team here for every aspect, from marketing to showings. It's a model where the agent only pays for the time they use that person, and they're an employee of the company. So it's super simple. And I was listening.
They don't want to do the paperwork. They don't want to do anything. They want to be able to, back on technology too. Like, I mean, it's going to get to the point where you should be able to say, okay, you should be able to say, fill out an offer for, and I'm just thinking this on AI in the future, right? Fill out an offer form for, contract purchase real estate and you're just talking into it, right?
Mhm.
Fill out an offer form for $585,000 for 123 Main Street in Cary, North Carolina, right? And it starts filling that out for you. And then you go back and double check it. But, it should be easier than what it is.
It should be, because there aren't that many moving pieces inside those contracts.
Right.
There's only very few spots where an agent has to have any input or can have any input on it. So it shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, we were talking with the AI stuff and not just AI, but the technology side of voice, I guess, right? And how long it takes some agents to actually close out a listing in MLS, right? Why is it so take some agents 3, 4, 5 days to actually close it out? It should be as easy as when you get in your car, you say, "Hey Siri, close listing, at 123 Main Street in Cary," and it closed for $685. My co-broke was whatever, right? Well, it's Joe Arno, and I'm able to do this and be done with it, right?
Yeah.
Then they shoot you a text confirmation or whatever it is, and you're done with it. That's what the future of real estate should be.
And getting the listing into the MLS is absolutely painful.
I say this all the time, at least for me, I talk about how to create the TurboTax of listing input. And I say that because I don't know if anyone files their taxes on TurboTax, but it pulls up your your W-2 and it imports all your data from the past and everything else. And yeah, but that's where floor plans come in. There's so much data off floor plans and photos. That's where AI could start really populating that listing detail for you in the future.
Yeah. No, that'd be fantastic to start seeing that.
We've got to start as an industry, as a organized real estate industry. And when I say organized real estate, I mean the MLS and the associations, think about how to make everyone's life easier, but it also at the same time makes the data more accurate.
And it goes back to the experience too for the consumer. If the agent is not buried doing all this menial stuff, these tasks, they're either delegating it to a team or AI is taking care of it for them. They're able to spend more time before, during, and after the transaction with their clients and their customers, and they're going to get a better experience.
Right. And here's where the ultimate issue is, right? Like, I think what we've seen during COVID and what we're going to see afterwards is just more of an acceleration of the top agents doing more business, right? I think you and I talked about this all the time when we saw on the Cape the biggest run up we've ever seen of real estate transactions 2020, 2021. I was asking you, like, are below average producing agents producing more? And you said no. It's just the top guys went from 30 million to 50 million, right? Like 70 million to 100 million, right? 5 million to 12 million, right? Like the guys that were doing good business just accelerated their business. There wasn't a lot of like low hanging fruit that was just being, because the market was so good, other people were getting it. It's because these other people were still knowing what they were doing. They were just doing it better and quicker. And I think we're going to see that. And we've seen that hollowing out in our membership. And I know across the country, hollowing out of that medium-sized broker, right?
Yeah.
You pretty much are ending whatever number you're using is probably depending on what market you're in. Raleigh's like a bigger market, so there are probably bigger agent counts to these numbers, but that medium-sized brokerage is so hard to run nowadays.
It is. Yeah.
Small boutique where you're kind of operating almost as a real team, right? As a team, as a brokerage, or you're at a bigger firm that's doing more for you. If you're in that medium-sized market, you're going to have to kind of do what your model is, I think, and offer team-type services as a brokerage.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see how a brokerage really can get along without accepting teams and this market, just because it's been pushed so hard, unless they have that model built into their business. The middle people, like you were saying, they're struggling. It is so hard to compete with the companies that are offering, these incredible splits and these vast numbers of agents. They can offer more, they can give more to their agents, or they give less and the agent gets more of their money.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see, especially this year, next year, the year after, we're going to have some really lean real estate years for brokerages, right? I think you're going to see the 2 or 3 in each market in the different models, right? The traditional kind of service side to the agent, right? You're going to see 2 or 3 of those models end up winning. You're going to see 2 or 3 of the high split models, the high split to the agents, maybe 0%, 100% type markets, or 95, whatever it is in your market, kind of win. You're going to see 2 or 3 of those, right? And then like everyone else is just going to fade away, and you're going to have 2 or 3 of the different models win.
That's right. How do you see the iBuyers faring and all this? I know right now
I still think it's out there in a certain respect, right? And I mean, I've never been in that market where it kind of works, from the Cape Cod perspective, but like in your market, right?
It was working here.
Yeah, and it's because it was simple, right? Like it was simple, it was easy, and they were paying good money. And the question becomes, I've really been interested in it from the person that needs to move, right? Like, so I look at it and say there's different kinds of people that are selling their house, right? They're the person that needs to move and wants to move, right? And the needs to move is a smaller section of the thing, because they either financially can't afford their house, or they have a new job, or whatever else, right? I mean, how is it much different than the way Relo was always working? For major corporations, right? If you don't sell your house within a certain amount of days, they're going to buy it and they're going to keep listing it, right? It's not different than that model, fundamentally.
That's true. I never even looked at it that way.
And so, I mean, if it's less than, I mean, I think it's going to settle in a small portion of the market and still always be there, but it's going to be, is 5 to 8, 10%. What does that number settle at of the market?
Yeah, I get it. It depends on
30 or 40% of the market ever.
What's that?
It's never going to be 30 or 40% of the market, but one of the values I think of innovation, kind of like the iBuyer, or not even the value, but the marketing of the iBuyer, it forced other agents to do it too, right? It forced other agents to up their game, and that's what's happened, right? Because if you do need to sell, it'll be interesting because it's an interesting thing because now I actually think iBuyer is more lucrative because more enticing because from the seller standpoint, because you don't have to sit on the market for 3, 4, 5 weeks, right? But it's harder to then sell it, right? But it was interesting that the iBuyer took off in the time when in your market where it was easy to sell already, right?
It was, yeah. And we're still seeing, down here, because we have so many job opportunities and so much movement and the industry coming in, going, or mostly coming, actually, not going. There's a lot of opportunities for people to come and get new jobs and having to move move in and move out. So we're still seeing
that need to move market. That's what I talk about. That need to move market.
Right. We're still seeing multiple offers in quick sales. If the property, and this happens in every market, if the property is priced right and it looks good, it's going to sell. One of the things that I'm hoping that a lot of agents will remember when last couple of years, when the price point that the consumer sets the price, and the agent has to do their best to keep that price at or just below the market, so that the buyers are going to come in and set that price. If we start going back to the old days, well, let's go a little bit higher and we'll negotiate down, it's going to get stagnant again.
Yeah, I mean, but if you don't need to sell, do you want to try that, right? That's the different strategy agents can talk you through. But if you got to move, you got to move.
Yeah, if a house is on the market for more than 2 weeks, around here anyway, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is and I would do this is run a comp for what the house was worth in February 2019. And show them what it's worth today, right? If they're oh, well, my neighbor down the street got this for their house. Well, that's a different market, but look how much still you got in 3 years that you weren't ever expecting.
That's right.
The problem is what you're going to have to go buy too. I guess that's the issue.
We got a couple of comments. Greg Kiley saying hi from LinkedIn. And Greg Kiley worked with him on a couple of boards, both of us, and we're both out of state now, which is great for us. And Scott Zano, and this is a good question for you. Scott Zano is saying price, presentation, and promotion. So price and presentation, 100%. Is there any better tool than MLS to present to promote it?
I mean, I don't, because that's the thing is everyone. I mean, here's the way I'm phrasing it, right? I don't think individual MLSs are necessarily problematic unless they're not servicing their clientele, right? Their members, right? But the cooperative notion of MLS is under attack. And I don't think people understand how much it is. And it's under attack not only from brokerages are trying to find ways around it because they want to double in deals, right? Agents are trying to find ways around it because they're trying to double in deals, right? Regulators are trying to question whether the MLS makes the market work. And I can tell you it does, and we can show it. But still, I think while I think the MLS industry has resisted thinking the MLS is a marketing engine, it still is the greatest marketing engine ever invented.
Absolutely.
Period. And not only that, then you have the distribution on top of it, right? That concept of IDX that you guys can all share listings online, that is a great marketing engine that was always created, but it still is that data repository too, right? So you got kind of the data repository and the marketing engine together.
Yeah, you can't get the word out faster than put it on MLS to as many eyes as that are looking for that type of property. There's no other tool out there. Yeah, you know, doing a walkthrough video is helpful. It definitely helps if you're doing something like that inside the MLS if you can. But as far as getting it out to those eyes, as many eyes as possible, you can't do better than throwing it onto MLS and getting it out there. And that's going to get the highest and best price for sure. Or it should anyway.
Yeah, and you also are cooperating in a database and cooperating with other agents who want to do it to you, right? Like, so if you're thinking about withholding something, it's like, look at it and say, okay, well, do I like it when other people do it to me, right? At the end of the day, this is one of the unique industries where, you know, the only other industry where you are like this is kind of attorneys. Where you may be going up against, you know, your competition, but then you all have to work together to get something done, right? A negotiation or, you know, even in a court case, like you with the other attorney, you're still having to work together to do the case, even though you're on opposite sides, right? And so what I say is like, this is a very unique business where cooperation is still that fundamental back point. And that's where I actually look at it from technology standpoint and from a policy standpoint of how we're using cooperation to further that, right? How can I use technology to further cooperation? And that's where I think about AI too, right? Like if I have a poorly written listing description, that doesn't help the buyer agent, right? Like, you know, like if I don't have a floor plan of the listing, that doesn't help the buyer agent, right? So how are we using technology to even help those buyers agent to help that facilitate that cooperation?
And by helping the buyer agent, you're helping your seller.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's comes down to it. If we don't help each other out, we're not going to get the best price for the seller or for the consumers on both ends. They're not going to get the best deal.
Yeah,
that's for sure. You mentioned lawsuits. Any pressures coming up that in this industry that we should be aware of?
I mean, I think you're seeing a lot of the changes, right? And the world's not ending. We've been displaying now buyer agent compensation on websites for months, maybe a year now, right? I'm trying to remember when, but yeah, like the world's not ending. Northwest MLS in Seattle had got rid of the mandatory offer of compensation in the MLS. The world didn't end, and 99.5% of the properties still offer compensation because they see the listing agent sees the benefit, the listing broker sees the benefit of that because it makes it a pro-competitive atmosphere for sellers. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you got to remember that, you know, MLS is very pro-competitive because it actually brings everyone together kind of in that same space to compete.
No, absolutely. How about on the association side? Any changes? I know there was for a while. There was quite a few consolidating areas. A bunch of them getting together. Is that still a trend to get bigger?
I think you're always going to see it because I think that the really great associations are innovating and offering different things, and then there's a lot that still are stuck in their old ways.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, you know me, I'm big on the idea that we're not going to be able to continue to service our members in the same way, right? And I'm doing it differently, right? Like we have, what I'm finding on the association side is like, I'll do a pop-up Zoom to some members in a certain town on an issue, right? Before we were having to tread out there, host a lunch, talk about the issue, get feedback, all that. And we can pop up on a Zoom and have a conversation like you and I are having with 30, 40 agents in a smaller town and be able to talk to them about the issue and talk them through what's going and how it would impact public policy, right? I mean, that's ultimately the idea is how does this issue that's being proposed in this town or the city or the state impact your ability to do business, right? Or impact housing affordability or impact property rights? How does this do that? And we need, as association staff, we need that feedback from our members. And we're able to use technology in a different way to kind of engage that feedback on a more regular basis.
Are you seeing more agents getting involved in their local towns?
I think you have to. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you're going to see more of agents involved in the next couple of years of the association anyways, because when the market slows down, people have more time to do things. But I think that it depends on the association and the outreach and the concepts they're doing, right? Like if they're going to do the same old tired tactics, they're going to get the same old tired engagement, right?
Yeah.
But you definitely, I think, especially on the housing affordability side, for us on the Cape, we're seeing much more agent involvement because they're much more seeing it among a rash of their membership, their clientele at this point.
Wow, you guys are hitting at a critical point.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think. I mean, we're thinking about it this way: where prior to COVID, 20% of our workforce lived off the Cape. Now 50% do. You now have to make $200,000 to afford just about anything on the market on the Cape, right? Like, I mean, it is a different world now, and so we've got to figure that. And it's not like you can drive like in the Raleigh market, you can drive further out of Raleigh and you just end up with an hour in. You drive an hour outside the Cape, you're back in Boston, which is an insane housing market too.
That's right. Everywhere in between is expensive. Yeah. All right, Ryan, this has been fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us on the show and share your wisdom.
Thanks, Jeff, for having me. I appreciate it.
And what's interesting, real estate's a local business, and here you are in South Carolina.
Yeah,
it's worked out. I mean, so much good has come out of the misery of the pandemic, and you're definitely benefiting in some way from that.
I'm back and forth a lot, and I mean, understanding the local market dynamics and staying in touch with people—that's the key. Yeah. Like, my job is much relationships as your job is.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, stay on as we sign out. I got a couple things I want to talk about. All right, thank you for watching.